Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Conversations with Karen and Kat. I'm Karen Scott Green,
And I'm Kat Hardrick.
and we are here today with Arlevia DeLoach Wallace. And Arlevia is joining us today because it is Suicide Prevention Month. September is. And so we wanted to have an important conversation, which is entitled um, Your I just flaked. Anyway, this conversation is about suicide prevention and checking in on your strong friends,
That's
because
right.
often the perception is that when people seem to be doing well, um, that
Mm-hmm.
they don't need anything. But those are the folks that we need to be checking in on, because as suicide the reason why we have Suicide Prevention Month is to raise awareness and discuss the highly stigmatized topic of
Yep.
mental health awareness and suicide.
Right.
And, I did a little bit of digging,
Yep.
and a report from the U.S. Surgeon General found that from 1980 to 1995, the suicide rate amongst African Americans ages 10 to 14 increased 233% as compared to 120% of non-Hispanics. I know there
Mm-hmm.
used to be a time where we thought that suicide didn't happen in our community, but it
Mm-hmm.
does.
It
Um,
does.
it does. And from 2000 to 2020, not just in our community, but it does. But this is what we want to focus on to take away that stigma. From
Correct.
2000 to 2020, more than 800,000 people died by suicide in the United States, with males representing 78.7% of all suicides that happened between 2000 and 2020. In 2022, around 94,000, almost 50,000 people died by suicide, according to the CDC, which is the highest number ever recorded.
Mm.
And so, with that, Olivia, tell us about the services that you provide and how we can check in on our strong friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I provide a wide variety of services. I actually have a private practice where I provide services to individuals who have a variety of mental illnesses and substance use disorders. And I also work with one of the suicide crisis lines where I provide crisis response,
Mhm.
intervention to those individuals who are in need of um, crisis response during the time of having thoughts of suicide, to help them with getting to a place of stability,
Mm-hmm.
by developing a safety plan so that they can continue to remain in the home and be safe until an agreed upon time where they go in and get services, or get that person transitioned immediately in for services, or provide active rescue services for those who have already attempted the act of attempting to end their life.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Good. Yeah. So first, I don't know if we introduced you and said your full name. What is it? Olivia DeLoach Wallace.
the Wallace
And
is silent. So
I
you could, um,
did introduce her, ma'am.
oh,
she did introduce me, but
girl, I ain't hear
uh,
her name. I'm like, what? But this is how we do, right? Look, I'm sorry. I
Yes.
didn't hear your name, but um, and tell people what your background is.
so I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of
Mm-hmm.
Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in the mental health field for, oh gosh, over, I don't want to say a number, but if
Right,
I
right.
have to, I
A
will.
long time, a long time. Yeah,
a, a very, very long time.
You're seasoned.
that's right.
Yes.
That's a
And
better one.
so I'm quite seasoned in the field. I started as a direct care person, as in more so of a CNA in the field
Mm-hmm.
of mental health, and then I worked my way up by getting my bachelor's degree and get my master's degree in counseling and psychology, and here I am today.
And the reason I ask that is because the stats that my girl laid down, with your years of experience, can you speak to the change and the increase and maybe some reasons why you think suicide prevention has hiked so high in the recent years?
Well, suicide completion has hiked so high over the last few years, primarily due to number one, people being closed off and not having human to human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
COVID has done a number not only with the disease attacking us physically, but
Mhm,
emotionally and mentally as well. The residuals of COVID has caused a lot of individuals to be isolated, and
mhm,
as in the spiritual realm, when the older people would say the idle mind is the devil's workshop.
mhm,
Um, Not to say that people that complete suicide are of the devil or have the devil um, in their mind, but just saying when a person does not have any contact and
mhm,
are not able to get human interaction,
mhm,
um, your mind rambles, especially when a person is already suffering from a mental illness such as depression or, you know, any other type of anxiety or any other type of disorder that causes that person to suffer from sadness or have
mhm,
symptoms of having thoughts that they don't want to be alive anymore. And
mm,
it's not that um, we have provided enough to tools to be able to assist with those who are still not able to get out and go about to handle being around other people right now, because we
mhm,
What
still have people with weak immune systems that can't.
mhm.
What are some of the things that we should be looking for in family members and friends that are telltale signs that someone may be contemplating suicide?
You know, there are several things that we should look for. First and foremost, a lot of times, when you see a person that may normally be a very happy person and they
Hmm.
start to get grumpy and have a lot of anger outbursts and things like that, that may be something saying that, they're having some types of emotional things that are going on that they may not feel comfortable talking with anyone about. And a lot of times, when people don't feel comfortable or confident having someone to speak with about something, they will internalize it for a long time. And then a person may start just shutting down and isolating. And
Mm.
when that person starts isolating, then maybe they may stop taking medications that they were originally taking. They may start storing up that medication to use for um, a possible suicide attempt. They may even start giving away some of their most prized possessions, saying that they're going to have a yard sale or they're going to give away these heirloom type of things to other people. And you know that these are things that they really, really um, take as their pride and joy. Those are some of the things that you want to look for and look into. And you want to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to
Okay.
ask a person, if they're having thoughts of suicide.
Okay.
The most the most, I guess, stigmatized thing, I guess, that a person may say, or the most incorrect thing that we feel is that, oh, if you ask someone if they're having thoughts of suicide, that'll put it in their head and
Mm.
make them
Mhm,
want to act on that. That is absolutely incorrect. When a person suffers in silence and they
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like they have anyone to even ask them how they're doing, or if there's something wrong with them, or if they're having these thoughts, then they're really going to feel like they don't matter in the first place.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
we, as family, friends, loved ones, associates, strangers, it's everyone's job to check on each and every human being. It's not just my job as a professional.
Right. I totally agree with you. Suicide unfortunately has touched my household in that people that um, my two sons' best friends have committed suicide, has committed suicide tragically, and one by firearm, and the other one by jumping out of a window.
Mm,
And knowing, we didn't, they didn't, they were young, they didn't see the signs. One was isolated and felt alone. And I only can imagine that that was the uh, triggering point for that young person to do that.
Mm.
And then the other one was in the home with the family, and you just don't know. So those signs that you're speaking of is so important. um, but how can we wrap our arms around family members? Because I call veterans and check on veterans. So
right.
that's one piece that we can do. But how can we wrap
Absolutely.
our arms around people? Because when we check on them, even if they don't tell us, right? Because I've had a person say, "Don't tell anybody." That I can't not tell anybody
Mhm.
that you're thinking about suicide. So how can you walk me through like how to handle that? Because that has literally been in front of my
Right. Well, I'm faced with that a lot when it has been even with clientele. They'll say I'm not gonna tell anybody because that's gonna get me locked up, and
mm-hmm,
because they feel like it's punitive for
mm-hmm,
them to have a respite to go to the hospital and things like that. But
mm-hmm,
it's very important that if someone is suffering in silence and they are having thoughts of suicide, that you let them know that you know I, I can't guarantee you to keep this as a secret, because this is not a secret to be kept.
right.
It's very important. This is a matter of your life and your death. And
Mm-hmm,
at this point, it's my due diligence to keep you safe,
mm-hmm,
because right now you may not be in a good place to keep yourself safe.
mm-hmm,
Um, and it's because a person who is contemplating thoughts of suicide, have have a plan of suicide. Those persons are people who feel like this is the only way out of whatever their situation is that they're in. And at that moment, mentally and emotionally, there's no stability. And if a person is withdrawn and is not responding to us, then we should check on them.
Yeah.
We should go by to see them. Those persons who we may feel that are at a greater risk, especially the elderly.
mm-hmm.
Elderly people complete suicide at a higher rate than we would expect.
Okay.
Wow.
And
I
it's
wasn't aware of
because,
that.
Mm-hmm,
oh yes, they're more serious about it because they're elders and they're ready to go. They
Mm.
don't feel like anybody cares. They feel like everybody's moved along with their lives and they're
mm-hmm,
old.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're off the radar.
Mm.
We have to be really, really careful to pay attention to our elders, especially those who may be suffering from various illnesses,
Mhm.
and especially those who may have a mental health disorder. Um, when it comes down to our young people who are being bullied
mm-hmm,
in the schools, we need to pay very close attention to those individuals because, um, truth be told, when it comes down to it, a lot of the bullies will encourage those individuals to
Mm.
We've
complete
been we've
suicide.
been seeing that on we've been seeing that in the last few years where incidents like that have happened. One girl actually was charged for encouraging a young man to commit
Mm-hmm.
suicide
Hmm.
when he did. And I want to pause at this time to say if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, call or text 988 immediately. That is a non emergency number where medical you can talk to someone um, regarding your mental health crisis, and if needed the mental health professionals could be dispatched to you so that you could be taken
To
you could
get the care that
talk to
you
someone to get the care that
need.
you need. So again, if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, call or text 988 immediately.
And Alivia,
Arlevia,
I know, right? Alivia is one of those providers on the other end of that phone. So
absolutely,
that's why she's very important to this show, because she is one of the many brave women and men who help all of us in our time of need on the other end of that phone. And if you
Yeah.
dial 988 and you hit number one, that's for veterans. Am I correct, sister?
absolutely, absolutely. If you dial 988 and you press number one, that is for our veterans and our military service members, and the family members of those service members. So you can
Mm-hmm.
call on behalf of of a service member, or you can call and get information for yourself. And if you continue to hold on to the line, or if you press zero, um, then you will be connected to the local National Suicide Prevention hotline in the area where you're located nearest to. And this is a nationwide and worldwide number. It's not
And,
just specific. Hmm.
and if you are not in
Go
crisis,
ahead.
you can also reach Arlevia via email at buildingbrighterfuturesinc@gmail.com, or you can reach her by phone at 404-913-6604. And the website where you can also reach her is buildingbrighterfutures1.com, and that's the number one. And so, as Arlevia has said, she also is in private practice and she sees patients. So, if you're not in crisis, then this you want to reach out to a therapist so that you can have ongoing care in conjunction and working with your therapist and a medical doctor. Is that correct, Arlevia?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you aren't in crisis and you do want to reach out, you can actually dial that 988 number, and those mental health professionals, they can get you information and get you connected to places where you'll be able to find like therapists that may be close by your area and things of that nature as well. And it's for individuals who are having a crisis, period. Whether it's a suicidal crisis or mental health crisis or behavioral health crisis, substance use or addiction crisis,
Oh, wow.
um,
Okay.
all of those individuals who are suffering from any type of crisis can call 988.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. So, I this may be a weird question, but it was posed to me. Like, what do you do when you call that number? Like, seriously, like that process of it in itself is intimidating, and sometimes people don't want to call it because what's going to happen when they call?
Before you
Well,
answer that, can I say this one thing? If you're uncomfortable talking on the phone, you can chat the Suicide Crisis Lifeline at 988lifeline.org. Again, that is 988lifeline.org.
or you can simply text 988.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what happens is it is intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to be honest, because every time I pick up the phone, I don't know whether
Mm,
I'm going to get a person who's it has actively acted on a, an act in their life, or
Mm-hmm.
if I'm getting someone who has been contemplating thoughts, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to speak with someone who's playing on the phone.
Right.
Those, we have from all broad spectrum of people. However, um, you as a person that may be having thoughts of suicide have to first be true to yourself and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that this is what's happening, and not be afraid to say, okay, I'm not okay right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to not be okay. There are
That's right.
people that will be there to support you. And I think the most important thing for individuals who are in crisis, who are having thoughts of suicide, is to know that going to be evaluated is not a punitive measure. It
mm.
is
That's
not
right.
something to um, make you look like you're um, a weaker person, a lesser person. It's not something to lock you up. It's because you're going to go home. You're going to be evaluated, and you're going to be there, and you're going to have people there that are there for your safety and your health. It's not a punitive thing. It's not to punish you. It's not for you to be embarrassed by any means. It's for help.
Mm-hmm.
It's to help a person who's not in control of their actions or their thoughts or their feelings enough to be able to make the good decisions for themselves.
Because sometimes when you get to that, when you spiral out and you're not, uh, you have hallucinations.
Mhm.
Can you speak to some of that too? Because I would like the viewers to know about that. That you may have a family member, loved one, friend that may be calling you saying, such and such is trying to hurt me, and then we
Mhm.
may initially say like, what we need to do, who we need to round up, but that might be the sign of
Psychosis.
yes. So
Right.
can you
That
speak to
may
that?
Right. So a person who may be having audio hallucinations or visual hallucinations may be at a higher risk of contemplating suicide, because the audio hallucinations, as we know, that's where a person is hearing voices. The
Mm-hmm.
visual is a person is seeing other things or people or objects that may not be there, that we
Mm-hmm.
don't see them, but they're real to that person.
Right.
And we also have this other type of hallucination that's called a tactile hallucination, and that's basically where they feel things
Mm-hmm.
that may be sensory, as in on their skin, in their skin, or they may feel or see like something crawling inside of their skin and things of that nature. People who have any type of hallucination can be at a greater risk of a suicide, because those thoughts that may come for a person who may not have suicide, they may be able to combat those. But a person who is having an audio hallucination may be hearing something that may be coming from the inside of their brain or from the outside, which is telling them or giving them a command to do something.
Is
So
is that a large number of people who have suicidal thoughts, or is that a very small percentage that have suicidal thoughts that would also have hallucinations in conjunction?
the second of what you said.
It's a small number.
Sometimes, no, it's not a small number.
Okay.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not a it's not the largest number, but it is a great amount of people who have a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
Especially those individuals who are diagnosed with those severe and persistent mental illnesses that um, have symptoms of audio, visual, or
Hmm.
tactile hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
those people would experience more. of a, especially when they those individuals who may be diagnosed with a disorder called schizoaffective disorder.
Hmm.
That would be something where a person has the um, same characteristics of maybe a depression and bipolar, as well as schizophrenia,
Mm-hmm.
all put together in one diagnosis. And the symptoms of all of those would be having the audio visual hallucinations, um, also having the depression, as well as, maybe even having manic episodes and, rage and things of that nature as well.
Okay. Now, when I was getting prepared for this show, I was particularly interested, or I am particularly interested, in how suicide is rising amongst persons of color, Black and Brown folks. And one of the things that I read was that in 2020, suicide was the third leading cause of death for Blacks and African Americans ages 15 to 24. And also that poverty levels affects mental health status. I mean, we kind of already know that. We didn't need a study to tell us that, but that Blacks and African Americans living under the poverty level as compared to those over the poverty level are twice as likely to report serious psychological distress. Can you kind of address how um, socioeconomic status is impacting persons of color? And I guess I was really interested about that because as we're coming out of the pandemic and people are still are on unshaky financial footing, and they're dealing with a lot of pressure. Student loans just kick payments just
Inflation
kicked back in
high,
October.
loaf of bread high.
Yeah. So are you seeing in your practice an increased amount of like anxiety and angst and just unwellness as it comes to issues that are caused by folks' concerns about their financial status?
Absolutely. A lot of the African American population are troubled with financial issues, especially with on those socioeconomic statuses that you guys are referencing.
Hmm.
However, there's a large number of other things that pour into the pot of it as
Okay.
well. So and we have the socioeconomic status component where we may or may not, but we also have to recognize, number one, the stigma against mental health and mental health
Mhm.
treatment in our community. And when we continue to have that stigma and we are not doing anything to decrease that stigma, we're going to continue to have our teenagers and things like that who are suffering from a lot of different things in silence, i.e., bullying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I.e., some of our teenage kids now are experimenting with all types of different substances, which induce psychosis and things of that nature. In addition to that, we have a lot of our teenagers, when they hit certain thresholds, they're experimenting sexually and they're getting
Mm-hmm.
picked on because of that. And that induces a lot of bullying, which in turn causes our teens to do a lot of things that they don't ordinarily feel like they want to talk to anyone about.
Okay.
They're not going to tell anybody that they're planning to end their life. And in addition to
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, we still have the family things that are occurring, i.e.,
Correct.
family abuse, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse within family systems. All of those
Mm-hmm.
things are still relevant. Those things are still elephants in the room and things that are being
Mm.
swept up under the rug. And so, with all of that, and our community saying, "Oh, we don't need it. That's just for a certain um, demographic
Right,
background.
right,
We're
right.
we don't get that type of problem." Um, newsflash, we all have issues.
That's
And we
right.
know, and we know that that's not the case. We know
Hmm.
that suicide amongst young people particularly is up. It has increased over
Absolutely.
the last few years. The death,
And with firearms.
yes. So,
Absolutely. Because, young people are very strategic, and they're very resourceful
mm,
because they know how to go and get things. They know how to watch parents who, in a lot of states, there are open carries. So the
Georgia.
parents have fire, right? Georgia, Florida,
Hmm.
some other states where, the firearms are there. Okay. And you don't have to have a parent that has a firearm to be able to have access to a firearm. People
That's
are
right.
resourceful. And
Yes.
so, you the main reason, though, I want to address, you said that the males have a higher lethality rate, is a
Four
term that
four
we call
times
it.
African American men are four times greater than that of African American women, according to the
Absolutely.
CDC in 2018, to be a victim
That's
of
because they're
suicide.
Suicide.
using more lethal means. And when I
Mm,
say more lethal
mm.
means, I mean firearms,
Hmm.
hanging themselves,
Wow.
jumping
Hmm.
off of tall fixed
Hmm.
objects, and
Hmm.
things of that nature,
Hmm.
because those are things that are irreversible.
Wow.
You can't,
Hmm.
um, you know, um, reverse those things.
Hmm.
So
Correct.
they those populations are there. When they say that they're going to do it, they are going to do it, and they mean what they are going to do.
They're
And a
more likely
lot of
to,
times they're
to follow
un,
through.
they're more likely to follow through, and they're more likely not to tell.
Mm.
You know, like I said, my son, one of my sons, they didn't own a gun at all. A friend, son's friend that I mentioned earlier, did not. The family did not own a weapon, and like you said, somehow that young person was able to find a firearm and use it and end his life. And I would like to, for everyone, well, and Arlevia, just speak to one. Is it okay for parents to still search their child's rooms and have conversations about that? Because if you
Yes.
don't have a firearm and
Yes.
if you don't have a firearm, sometimes people feel like, well, I don't want to invade their privacy and all
You
this other
better.
stuff. And so speak to that and also speak to the importance of having, if you do have firearms, gun safety, gun locks, and so forth. I forgot to bring my gun lock. I wanted to show one, but they're coming all
Absolutely.
different sizes. So let's speak to gun safety, please.
Okay, gun safety is very important. Okay, yes, we have a lot of trying times and the troubling times in the world where we are more inclined to protect ourselves by utilizing the means of firearms. However, parents, it is okay to let your kids know, look, I do understand that, we have our different areas of the house, that my room is my room, your room is your room. However, your room is still in my house,
Absolutely.
Hmm.
and will
Fact.
definitely look in your room, because I'm doing this for your safety, your health,
Hmm.
and it doesn't have to be like I'm the parent, you're the child, but it
Hmm.
is that I am your parent and I am responsible for your safety. I'm
Hmm.
responsible for making sure that you're safe, because, even though young people feel like their parents are the stupidest people in the world,
Hmm.
we've been here a
Right.
little bit longer than they have,
Hmm.
and we have experienced a lot more than they have. So, God gave us the capabilities of having these gifts and blessings, and our job as stewards of our blessings is to protect them. And in
Absolutely.
Hmm.
doing so, we must always let our kids know I'm coming in there whenever I feel like it.
Yes.
That's right.
And
That's
That
right.
was something that I had to let my son know, and always have those hard conversations.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's not about trying to, be your kid's friend or whatever, because a parent and a child relationship is always going to have some kind of component of a friendship in it anyway, if you guys are
Mhm.
bonding together.
Hmm.
It's not
Correct.
about crossing the lines of authority, okay? What it is about is allowing your child to know that you love them and you care, and you're going to protect them by any means necessary.
I was just about to
That's
say
right.
that. One of our users, Dreadlock Diva, said yes, check. And I have three sons. One is out the house, one's in college, one's still here. I check rooms. I will toss a room like I'm a correctional officer.
I know, right?
You know, if yes, I will go. I will look for things, and I because I love you. Because
That's
I
right.
Absolutely.
love you. Because I love
Right.
Yep.
you, I want to make sure that you are safe. Jules
That's
Scott
right.
Indeed.
says firearms. I'm going to put this up. Jules Scott said firearms used to be for families to protect their homes by the fathers. My father was a protector. However, suicide on my father's side of the family numbers are high
Mm,
by my educated, successful first cousins, men and women, doctors, therapists, accountants in their 40s. And yes, to gun safety. I've always checked my kids' room for their safety and safety of the entire family. First off,
To
Jewel,
you, Jill.
I am sorry for your loss in your
Hmm.
family. Thank you for sharing that comment because it is so
very sorry for the loss.
it is so important. Your transparency is
Yeah.
helping somebody who's going to watch this either live or
Absolutely.
in broadcast.
Thank you
And
for being transparent, Jewel.
Yes,
in addition to Jill's transparency, I want to just, I want to say that this is very paramount for our community, for the people that look like us to not be afraid to say that these are the things that have happened in my family.
yes.
And I want
That's
to
right.
say that I appreciate you for speaking out and saying that.
Mhm.
And my condolences to you and your family for all of the losses that you've had. But my encouragement
Mhm.
to you and my kudos to you to continue checking in on your child, your children, and making sure
Amen.
that you keep them safe when they're not able to keep themselves safe, because their brain is not fully developed enough to know what's
Right.
safe or not safe.
I
A
say this
young
all the
person's
Facts.
time.
brain is not fully developed until they're 26 years old.
That's right.
Speak facts. That's
I
right.
listen. I said
I,
this last year when I was on the campaign trail. Um,
you
you know,
ran for office, girl.
shut up. Um, talking about youthful offenders and how their brains
Mm,
are not fully formed, and although they do these adult acts, right? They don't have the mental capacity of someone who's 40 years old. Does that
right.
mean they're not held accountable? No, it doesn't mean they're not held accountable. It just means that we have to be aware that they've
Right.
made this decision and they are not fully formed human beings yet. They are
Right.
Absolutely.
Adults. Fully formed
Absolutely.
adults. Hmm. Look,
I'm
I got my gun lock. I got my gun lock. So I
yes.
have my gun lock. So this, I don't know if I let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. This
I
is a
see
gun
it.
lock
Okay.
family, and it has a key in here, and it actually has a crisis card in here. So
Mm,
Mm.
sometimes when I go, I keep these in my car. I get them from the VA, and whenever I'm out in these streets, as y'all know, we do that. I pass these out to individuals, who's willing to take them, and just is no questions
Right.
asked. You have a firearm. I encourage you to have these. They're very easy to do. If you're a veteran, you can grab these at the VA. And as a vet, I try to get them and pass them out. So if you see me in the streets, I keep these in my ready to care bags and I pass these out. The more we have gun locks, and they come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, you can go from You can go from this inexpensive one to very in-depth fingerprint entry codes and everything. But please, 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 if you have a firearm, if you're considering to have a firearm, and even if you don't have a firearm, keep one of these in the house. So if you happen to discover in your household that there is a firearm, you'll be prepared. And have conversations about firearms with everyone in your household. I don't know if it's an age appropriate. You ladies, you tell me, doctor, if it's a certain age that you will start. But I believe that the sooner you start having conversations about weapons and how important that we need to know how to use them, how to keep them clean, how to keep them safe, and keep them away from young people, because we have kids that are 5 and 6 years old having firearms, taking them to school and
Right.
doing things. So I just really want to drive that home, family. Get you some safe gun locks.
I say
Gun
if
locks or gun safes?
both,
Yeah, yeah.
both. If they're inside of a safe, then they're more safe than they could be, especially if it's a gun safe that has a key that you carry
Mhm.
with you,
Hmm.
or if it's a combination um, gun safe. If it's
Hmm.
inside of a gun safe with the gun lock on it, that's even better.
That's right.
If it's, if all you have is the gun, um, the gun lock, then that's fine as well. But it's always important to make sure that you have a protective measure with your firearm. And that's
Hmm.
not just for the kids' safety, that's for yours as well.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Because you may forget to put it on safety,
Yeah.
and
Mm,
some freak accident could happen. So just be mindful about all of those things.
And you can have the gun on safety and a freak accident can happen.
yes.
So let's be
Absolutely.
clear that firearms are meant for people who are responsible adults who
Absolutely.
know how to use it. Because if you're nervous with a weapon, don't buy a
You
gun.
don't need it.
Please
Go
don't.
get educated, join a gun club, go to all these places, get prepared. Because I was in the military and I was freaking out, but I had extensive training on how to
Right.
use weapons. We were constantly in drills and so forth. Same thing for all our law enforcement and so forth. People are trained. And I get comments, well, Kat, if someone breaks in my house, I want to be able to grab my gun. Dude, you should have enough time between them breaking in downstairs and you upstairs or whatnot. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And if
Right.
you have children, you are more likely for your child to grab your firearm before somebody breaks
Absolutely.
into you. You see what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
let's
Mhm.
just be a little more diligent with that. Let's check our kids' rooms. Let's have those conversations. Let's dial 988 if you're feeling some type of way. And let's have conversations about it. Call in, talk to us. Let's
Right.
break the stigma because
Yeah.
no one's above mental health, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
No one's
So
above it. And we need to embrace it.
we had another comment from Joel Scott coming from um,
Oh,
coming from LinkedIn. Joel says, "Thank you for this information. Yes, my children are all grown, college educated, but I still check in on them no matter what state of mind they are in.
facts.
I'm an
I
empty
know that's
Amen.
right.
nester now, so
That's
yes,
great.
gotta protect. Yes to gun locks, and I
Yes,
don't
Mhm.
you do.
I personally don't have a weapon. There's one in my house. I don't own it, but I, for a long time, was very nervous about having um, a gun in my home. My husband actually
Mm-hmm.
bought it without telling me because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no. Then, we had an incident at the house, and that's how I found out
Mm-hmm.
he had it because he came out with it to protect the home. And I was just like, but
What?
yeah, that's another
Mhm.
story that I'll tell offline. But in having that, Chandra Tally, my soror, said mine too. Me too, mine too. So, but
Mhm.
I was thankful on that day that he had it because he had to actually show someone who was at our back door that if you don't leave our backyard, this could end badly for you.
Mm.
And so I was thankful that he had it. So I'm saying all that to say that if guns are going to be in the home, because we have to be aware it's situational awareness, right? We're checking in on our people. We're
Correct.
making sure that if there are guns in the home, that folks who are in our home are well. And if folks are not well, you either need to get that gun out of the house, which is probably the best. If you have a young
Mhm.
person or anyone in your home who has suicidal ideations, it's probably best
Absolutely.
that you get that gun out of the home. I mean, let's just be honest, because
Yeah.
that that could end up being a very bad situation,
Mhm.
and no one had that intention. So I would recommend
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
if you have someone in your life who has suicidal ideations, make sure that the gun is not in the home. If you got to take it to your bank and put it in a safe deposit box, if you got to take it to somebody else's home, take it out of the home until they are well,
Absolutely.
or just maybe not have it in the home at all. That would just be my two cents.
Yeah.
You are
Don't take it to somebody
absolutely
else's
correct.
house.
Well,
Look,
But
you hear
you
I
me?
mean,
Don't
like,
take it to somebody. I know what you're saying. I know what you're
yeah,
saying. Get it out of your house.
get it out of your
well,
house.
Look.
you are absolutely correct in your thought process, though, because anytime that we have young people who are um, having thoughts of suicide, we do ask the parents if there is a firearm in the home. And we ask them to make sure that if there is a firearm in the home, that they attempt to store it somewhere outside of the home. They put it, if they aren't willing to store it outside of the home, that they get a gun safe if
Hmm.
Mhm.
possible. If they aren't able to get a gun safe, then at minimum get a the gun locks. But the safest place is for the firearm to not be in the home if you
Mhm.
do have a person who is not well and who is having thoughts of suicide. And to answer your question about how old is old enough to talk to a person or a child about gun safety and guns and things like that. If a child is able to walk, if a child is able to talk, then you need to be letting them know that weapons are dangerous and that
Yes.
they do not need to touch them.
Mhm.
They belong to mommy and daddy, and
Mhm.
they do not need to they do not need to touch them.
Yes.
And older young people need to know the dangers of, if you decide that you um, are going to attempt to end your life, tell somebody, say something.
That's good.
Don't go out seeking things to end your life with. If you see, if they know that you as a parent have a firearm, maybe the first thing that they're going to think about is utilizing your firearm. But
Mm.
firearms are not the only things that are utilized to um, in the person's life. It's just
I
the
was
most
about to.
lethal
Yeah.
of the means that are
Correct.
available.
So, so full transparency, and I'm trying not to cry because I don't want to have this whole clip of me crying on episode. Um, but y'all, I've talked about my mental state all the time, and through therapy, I was able to do that, and just the grace of God that I even met um, Arlevia. The way in which we met is just divine intervention, and
Mhm.
I believe that God puts people in your life um, for a reason. So I ain't crying, podcast viewers. Look, I ain't crying.
Eyes just sweating.
Right. That. Oh, I like that one. But knowing when you have like suicide doesn't have a look, right? Suicide ideations does not have a look. Um, a person can go to work every day, school every day.
Yes.
On the outside,
Absolutely.
look like they have this picture perfect, and they're suffering, right? They can have the best job, 6, 7 figures, whatever the case may be, beautiful home, nice, whatever, the white picket fence, and be really, really struggling on the inside. And
Absolutely.
um, we have to. I was in those spaces, family, and that's why I'm able to speak about it, and that's why I really feel like this show is very important. Not only was I a person who had suicidal ideations of not wanting to be a part of the living as a result of trauma, But I also, like I shared, my two sons' best friends actually committed suicide. And several weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, I had a friend whose family member committed suicide as well.
Mm,
So just like Miss Jewel came on, and there are so many people who we are connected through this tragedy, through
absolutely.
this yes, and so it's why it's so important that we all need to talk about this. There was also a lady, cause so a veteran friend who did try to do that, as Jewel just brought up, murder, suicide by homicide. They did everything that they could to try to get murdered because they didn't want to
Yeah.
commit the suicide themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a program for veterans. I think it's the Emory. Do you know anything about this? The Emory program that you can get pulled into for that. Go ahead and read the comment,
Can,
Karen.
so Jewel says, can you also talk about murder suicide? The numbers are high. Sadly, many families taking out their families. So I think so. Kat, you were talking about murder by suicide,
Right. Well,
um,
suicide by
Homicide.
cop.
suicide by cop.
Right.
What this person's talking about is, and usually it's with a man and a woman. Usually, most times it's the man who has murdered his significant other, and then he kills himself. It happens sometimes, vice versa, but usually the male who is the perpetrator. And in those incidents, usually there is a history of domestic violence. So
Absolutely.
that is the ultimate domestic violence, which is why, anybody who does this work, um, who work with these families, they try to get the victim away because this happens. This can be the consequence of those
Right.
relationships.
A
So
lot of, I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Go
Go ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. A lot of these individuals may have
Hmm.
the opportunity to go into shelters and things of that nature. That's the primary reason why shelters are so um
Important key. Mm-hmm.
key, but they're places that are very, very private. They're
Yes, they
Correct.
have to
privatized.
be.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
They're
Yeah.
very,
Undisclosed.
very, yes,
Mm-hmm.
undisclosed. That's the word I was looking for. My
Yeah.
brain
No,
all day.
girl. I
Um,
volunteer for them.
undisclosed. And in addition to that, not only are people doing the murder suicides of themselves and the spouses, but these people have been murdering their children as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And that's a big part of a person who is not well at all.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And
To hurt your children. I want.
can I just say
Go
that
ahead.
if you know someone in a situation that is in a domestic violence relationship, um, if it's a friend or a family member, it may not be safe for you to take that person into your home. And if you want to help them, the what you may have to do is work with the domestic violence, someone at
Organization.
the
Uh,
organization that can come up with a safety plan of how this
Right.
person and the
needs
children,
to
if there
exit.
are children, can exit safely, because
That's right.
it may not be safe at all for you as a family member or a friend to take this person into your home, particularly when, there's violence, and the perpetrator could end up finding where they are, and you could bring that violence into your home. So I would just say, um, that if you want to help someone, then get information about a domestic violence organization so that you can help them come up with a safety plan. You might be able to be part of the exit strategy, but it may not be safe to bring them into your home.
I think PADV is one. I think Partnership Against Domestic Violence is one spot that you
Yes,
guys can look into.
yes.
But also, I want to circle back. When I was saying suicide by homicide, I'm not saying suicide by cop. Because when
Okay.
y'all say cop, I'm talking about literally people doing self-destructive things where someone else will kill them. For example, the veteran that I'm speaking of was putting themselves intentionally in harm's way, not with police officers, just in these streets,
Okay.
so that
Mhm.
they
Yes,
then can have someone else. Okay, so that's the distinction I want to be
I
clear
know
on, because
exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that with a lot of different or populations. You
yeah,
know, who feel like, oh, I'm not going to do it, but I want to leave here, and someone else
yes,
is going to do it.
right,
So that I don't have to feel guilty, because a lot of people have various religious belief systems that if I in
If
my
they kill
life.
themselves, they'll go to hell, but if somebody else kills them, they're okay.
Correct.
mm-hmm,
Correct. But still not knowing at the time they're not well enough
Hmm.
right,
to think and strategize all the way through, and rationalize that, I'm still getting someone else to do this because it's something that I want to do. So
right,
in essence, I'm still completing suicide. Um,
correct,
but it's very important that we, as people who, you know are aware of the signs, the symptoms of a person who may be having thoughts of ending their lives, that we make sure that we keep a check on our people, that,
that's
if they start doing things that are out of the norm, that we, don't recognize as a regular behavior for them, that we say something, that we let them know that you know we're concerned. And especially if a person doesn't drink, and they just start drinking immensely, you
mm-hmm,
know
Mm.
if a person starts with, impulsive behaviors and things like that, they may be attempting to have a suicide by murder,
mm-hmm,
So
that those.
reckless behavior could be an indicator that someone is
yeah,
Absolutely.
not well. Okay.
mm-hmm,
These are all
mm-hmm,
great things to look out. And again, if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, call or text 988 immediately.
yes,
Um, and again, I want to give the information for Arvelia. You can reach out to her via email at Building Brighter. I said your name wrong. I'm sorry.
I'll leave you. We all cracking up like, ooh, child.
Arlevia. You can reach out to her via email at Building Brighter Futures Inc. at gmail.com. Phone number is 404-913-6604. And the website address is buildingbrighterfutures1.com. Kat, what you putting on your glasses for?
Ah, girl, I'm trying to see what's scrolling on the bottom of my screen. I can't see nothing.
Oh my goodness. So,
But
you know,
yes.
this conversation has been so enlightening. And so,
Mm.
Arlevia, what are the takeaways that you want to leave with us about checking on your strong friends? That those people who we think got it all together, that are just so strong, we don't need to check on them, but they may be going through.
And we need to check on them.
Need to understand that those strong people are always trying to keep it held together for you, because they don't want people to see them break.
Mm,
And those are the exact people who suffer in silence. And when they are suffering in silence, all they need to know is that someone cares. And asking the question is, are you really okay?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Are you really okay?
Yep. And it's okay, in my opinion, and you tell me, Olivia, sometimes just being in the same room with someone and just being quiet. Like after you ask those questions and you see that they don't want to speak about it, just sit in the room. Like I literally just sat in the room and got my hair stuff and started making products or doing my hair or something and just sit in the room so they're not by themselves. Because
Right.
sometimes the more you do that, you just show up. I don't want company. Okay, I'm
Mm.
here though. Just be
Mm-hmm.
quiet. And then eventually they'll be like, all right, let me just tell her something to get her out of my face, girl. 'Cause she get on my nerve, you know. But just to let people know, like, dude, we don't have to do this by ourselves. You do not
Right.
have to, you know. So thank you. Is there any last things you want to, any tips or any websites or
Um,
information you want to give?
a great resource for any type of person who has any kind of mental health or substance use is the SAMHSA, and that's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health. Um, I'm sorry, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration.
Is
They
that
are a
.org?
great, yes, SAMHSA.org.
SAMHA.org?
They give a lot of resources for um, counseling. They give a lot of resources for independent places where you may be able to get inpatient treatment. And a person's contrary belief system is that if I go to the hospital, that they're going to keep me for a long time. Well, for the most part, when a person is going in for observation, the observation period is between 24 to 72
2
hours.
hours. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. However, I would prefer to be evaluated for 72 hours when I'm not in a place where I am able to make good decisions on my own than to not have anyone to look at me at all.
Mm.
Mhm.
Because if you make a decision to die by suicide, that's a
Mhm.
permanent end to a temporary situation.
Oh, I say that
That's
all the
right.
time about
That's
suicide.
right.
I say that
Mhm.
all the
Yeah.
time. Jewel Scott says she loves that. Are you really okay? Me too, Jewel. And yes, sir,
That's
in
right,
the
Drew.
ear, in the space. Thank you, ladies. I stumbled across this. Yes, I love that too. Are you really okay? But I've
Are you really?
often said that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I have
Uh,
known
I mean,
I
mhm.
have known three black male attorneys that have taken their life
Mm.
um, since I've been practicing. And I've known
Mm,
one female attorney who took her life, black female.
mm,
Um, and on the outside, right, it looked like they had it all together. Um,
Mhm.
Great jobs, family, in two of the instances, and it just looked like they had it together. So when we heard that they had committed suicide, we're just like, what?
Yeah.
But who was asking? Then it makes me wonder: was anybody around to ask, "Are you really okay?
Are you okay? That's
Are
right.
you
Are
really
you
okay?"
really okay?
yeah,
Mhm.
And more importantly than that, we have to remove the stigma
stigma.
for our folks,
Girl.
particularly for getting mental health care,
Absolutely.
for being well.
And even being in the space of thinking about suicide. Like talking about mental health is the stigma, right?
Hmm.
And having an issue. But being the person on the other side saying, I attempted suicide. That right there, like no one says that and they keep it in themselves. And that's why I was sitting, like I said, full transparency. Because I was sitting here thinking about it because y'all know I'm running for office. Y'all know I'm out here in these streets, but I can't be a hypocrite. I can't sit up
Mm.
here and say, I want everybody else to talk about it and then I don't share my own story. Not that
Right.
I'm obligated to, but I want to help liberate somebody else. So
Yes,
I
indeed.
must, if God has seen me to this side, I must use my story to help somebody else.
Mm.
So I'm prayerful that this story liberates someone, saves someone, and builds us and make us to be a stronger community
What does the
so
song?
that
If I can help somebody, then my living has not been in vain. Somebody at some point is going to
And
stumble across this podcast episode and they're going to hear you, sister. And like Jules said, your tears are okay. Your tears are beautiful. You know, I
yes,
tease
they
about
are.
the waterhead, but your tears are beautiful because you're authentic in telling your story. You're transparent. That's why I love you. You're
Yes.
transparent. That's what draws me to you,
Mm,
right? And
thank you.
somebody
Love
in
y'all.
this episode is going to say, okay, it's time for me to make a phone call.
Indeed.
It's time for me to make a phone call. Either that's going to be the 988 or it's going to be the Arlevia. They're going to make a phone call. Thank you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you. And on that, my sister, because nothing else needs to be said. Thank you for
Thank you
joining us.
all for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of
Thank you.
Conversations with Karen and Kat, where we're
Well,
impacting
we
the
are
world
impacting the world one
one
conversation
conversation
at
at
a
a time.
time.